My hands have carried deaths I could never count. Not one, not two, not 10. I lost count after the Third War, after the winter when bodies froze before they even touched the ground. My name is Rashid Khan, and for 17 years I was the commander of a Taliban unit in the mountains of Helmand, Afghanistan. I learned to shoot before I could write my own name. I learned to hate before I learned to love. And at 38, I thought I knew all the faces of death, until that day when I tried to kill a man, and the bullet didn't want to hit. It was February 2018. The cold cut through the skin like blades of ice, and the wind howled among the rocks in a way that only exists in places where heaven and hell seem to fight for the same territory. Our outpost was hidden among gray mountains, far from cities, witnesses, the law, mercy. I grew up in a nameless village where children played among rusty tanks and mothers cried softly so that no one would hear. My father was killed when I was 7, executed by foreign soldiers hunting insurgents. I never knew if he was guilty or innocent. It didn't matter. War doesn't choose. It devours. At 11 years old, a man with a black turban and empty eyes came to our village to recruit. He handed me a rifle that seemed too heavy for my bones. "You will avenge your father," he said. I, a child hungry for purpose and identity, accepted. I was taught to see the world divided between us and the enemies of Allah. I was taught that killing was honor and doubting weakness. But at night, when the camp slept and only the crackling of the campfire remained, I remembered my mother. She prayed softly, stretching her hands towards a sky that seemed deaf. She murmured a name that the elders forbade, Isa, Jesus. She said he was different, that he came to save, not to condemn. These memories were ghosts I pushed to the back of my mind every time I pulled the trigger. I rose quickly. I was efficient, cold, obedient. At 23, I commanded a squad. At 30, I coordinated operations in 3 provinces. Men respected me not for my wisdom, but for my ability to do what others couldn't. Look someone in the eye and take their life without hesitation. Spies, traitors, foreigners. They begged, cursed, remained silent. It mattered little. The result was always the same, until he arrived. It was a Tuesday, around 2 in the afternoon, when my men dragged a foreigner to the outpost. He looked to be about 30 years old, with dusty brown hair and unshaven beard. He wore local clothes, but his eyes were a blue that seemed to defy everything around them. He spoke Dari with a strange accent, but he spoke. It was at that moment that something changed. We found him in the village of Kars, distributing books. His name was Farid, and the scars on his face looked like maps of battles he wasn't afraid to remember. He dropped his backpack in front of us. When I opened it, I found Bibles, 12 of them, hidden among blankets and pills. It was obvious who he was. Even so, I asked, "Missionary?" He looked up. Those eyes held no panic, no hatred. They carried something that disconcerted me even more. Peace. A peace completely out of place in that place. "My name is David," he said in a firm yet gentle voice. "I am here to share the love of Christ with those who have not yet heard it." My men burst into laughter. I didn't, because the instant he spoke the name of Christ, something inside me trembled, something ancient buried since childhood. It was as if my mother's voice whispered again in my memory, as if her hidden prayers resurfaced with the weight of all the lives I had taken. I tried to expel that thought from my head, like blowing smoke away. "Do you know what we do to those who try to corrupt our faith?" I asked, trying to keep my voice as hard as stone. David nodded. "I know," he replied, "and yet I came, because you also deserve to know that God loves you." A heavy silence filled the air. Farid, irritated, drew his weapon without thinking. I raised my hand immediately. "Leave it to me," I ordered. Even today, I don't know why I asked for that. Maybe out of authority. Maybe because something about that man stirred a part of me that I thought was dead. Or maybe because I needed to prove, to myself, that I was still the same ruthless commander as always. I drew my Makarov from its holster. The pistol was cold, familiar, a companion through years of bloodshed. "Very well, kneel down." He obeyed. But before lowering his head, he looked straight into my eyes, as if he could see inside me, and said something that made my stomach churn. "Rashid, God has already forgiven you." I froze it. "How do you know my name?" I blurted out, feeling the ground shake inside me. He smiled, not arrogantly, but with compassion. I don't know, but he knows. I felt my hands trembling, something that hadn't happened since I was a child. Last chance, I growled. Deny your faith. Say that Allah is the only God, and you will live. David closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his dusty face. I cannot deny the truth. Jesus is the Son of God. He died for me, and if necessary, I will die again and again before denying his name. The wind stopped. The men around murmured uneasily, as if something invisible were passing through them all. I pointed the gun at his chest. I shot. If you've ever felt that God has abandoned you, if you think your past is too heavy, or that you've done things he could never forgive, listen to what happened next. Because that shot, that single shot, turned my life upside down. The shot echoed through the mountains. The smell of gunpowder enveloped me. I knew that sound and that recoil like I knew my own name. I knew exactly what a 9mm bullet does at 3 meters away. I had seen men fall before the sound even finished echoing. I had seen the light vanish from someone's eyes in less than 2 seconds. More David. David did not fall. He remained kneeling, with eyes closed, hands crossed over the chest, without blood, no injuries, no impact. His shirt was intact, except for the dust. There was no hole, no mark, nothing. It was as if the bullet had passed through the air and disappeared somewhere else. I lowered my weapon without realizing it. I simply couldn't comprehend what was before me. My men were as paralyzed as I was. Farid, always so confident, always the first to act, took a few steps back, as if he'd seen a ghost. Hamid murmured something in Pashto, but my brain couldn't decode anything. It was as if the very air had stopped. The mountain, the wind, the world. Everything seemed to watch in silence. I tried to speak, but my voice came out as a broken whisper. What? David slowly opened his eyes. And that look. There was no bravado, no pride, no fear. Just a tranquility that made no sense at all to someone who should have been dead. God protected me, he said, almost as if speaking about the sunrise. That hurt me more than if he had insulted me. That's impossible, I murmured to myself. I fired. I felt the shot. The bullet doesn't disappear into thin air. Nothing in the world could. I raised the pistol again, but my hands were trembling. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. I adjusted the sights, took a deep breath, and pulled the trigger. Nothing. The gun jammed. I tried to unlock it with my thumb. I forced the bolt. I hit it with the palm of my hand. Nothing. The same pistol that had never let me down, that I trusted more than any man in my troop. Now, it was just a dead weight in my hands. "Give me your gun!" I yelled at Farid. He handed me the AK-47 as if passing a cross for someone else to bear. I adjusted the stock on my shoulder, took a breath, aimed, and fired. The shot was fired, but the bullet didn't. She diverted. It was as if something were pushing her, as if the air had changed density. She ricocheted off a stone, raising dust. I fired again, in disbelief. The second bullet curved toward the ground, almost hitting my feet. Hamid shouted the word we were all thinking, "Witchcraft!" I backed up until my back was against the stone wall of the outpost. My breathing was uneven, the world spinning. "He's a demon," I finished, without recognizing my own voice. But when I looked at David, that idea crumbled. He remained kneeling. He wasn't trying to run. He wasn't trying to defend himself. He was just praying. His hands were crossed over his chest, his breathing calm, his lips moving softly. He seemed protected, not by magic, but by someone. I threw the rifle to the ground with force. The metallic clang echoed off the rocks like thunder. My men murmured, each trying to find meaning in the impossible. "Commander, what are we going to do?" Farid asked, almost whispering. For the first time since I became leader, there was no answer in my mind. Nothing. A huge void opened up inside me. Then I looked at David. He opened his eyes and stared at me with a firmness that pierced me. "Rashid," he said, using my name as if he'd known me forever. "You can't kill me because God hasn't allowed it. It's not my time yet. He has a purpose for me, and a purpose for you too." "Shut up!" I exploded, feeling a knot of fear and anger rise in my throat. "You know nothing about me." David tilted his head, without taking his eyes off him. "I know you carry the weight of all the lives you've taken. For years. I could see in his eyes that he knew everything about me. "I know about the nights you can't sleep," David said, his voice soft yet firm. "I know the faces of those you killed appear in your dreams, and I know that, as a child, your mother spoke to you about Jesus." Each of his words struck my heart like a blade, cutting through layers I didn't even know existed. "You were just a child, Rashid," he continued. "You buried that memory because it was too painful to remember." My body trembled. Each of his words was a truth I had never confessed, not even to myself. "How?" I whispered, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It's not me who knows," David replied, tears streaming down his dust-covered face. "It's God. He knows you by name, Rashid. He loves you." Something inside me broke. A dam built by decades of hatred, fear, and blood suddenly gave way. A sharp pain spread through my chest, not physical, but deep, as if all the lives I had taken had condensed in that instant, demanding recognition. "Lock him up," I ordered, turning abruptly so that no one would see my weakness. My men obeyed, still stunned. They dragged David to an improvised cell, between stones and rusty metal bars. He didn't resist, only gave me that look full of compassion, impossible to ignore. When the cell door closed, I was alone. The sun was beginning to set, tinging the mountains with shades of fire and gray. I collapsed against the stone wall, my hands trembling, my breath ragged. For the first time since I was a 7-year-old boy crying over my father's death, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. What power could stop a bullet fired with intent to kill? What God could protect an unarmed man from an executioner armed to the teeth? These questions echoed in my mind, and the answer seemed as impossible as the miracle I had witnessed. That night, no one at the outpost slept. The men gathered around the campfire, murmuring theories and fears. Some said it was black magic. Others insisted the weapon had malfunctioned. Farid even suggested we burn David alive to ensure his death. But even as he said this, his voice trembled with doubt, something I had never seen in him before. I stood apart, leaning against a cold rock, watching the stars twinkle over the silent mountains. For the first time in 17 years, I prayed. It wasn't to Allah. It wasn't memorized words. It wasn't ritual. It was a desperate whisper that welled up from the depths of my being. If you really exist, if you are who this man says you are, show me. Hours passed like snakes among the rocks. The campfire crackled irregularly, casting flickering shadows on the tense faces of my men. None of them spoke loudly. They only murmured, exchanged nervous glances, or stroked their weapons, seeking some kind of reassurance. I remained there, apart, sitting on a flat stone, my back against the mountain, contemplating the starry sky. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that couldn't be explained, a silent presence, a hope that didn't depend on my hands, weapons, or strength. And for the first time, I realized that my heart, even hardened by years of war, could still be touched by God. The stars seemed brighter that night, as if observing everything from above, silent and imposing. The cold cut through my skin, seeping into my layers of clothing, but I barely felt it. I was trapped in old memories, as if pulled back to childhood by an invisible force. I closed my eyes, and the first image that came to mind was that of my mother. Her face, always marked by the sun and the harsh life of the desert, but softened by a gentleness that no suffering could take away. Even when food was scarce, even when bombs fell in the distance, even when it seemed that hope had fled our village, she still smiled at me with that silent love. I remembered one night in particular. I must have been about 9 years old. We had just buried my father, wrapped in a blanket, because there wasn't enough wood for a coffin. The elders led the ceremony, ritual words that sounded empty to me. Later that same day, when we returned home, my mother knelt beside my bed and began to pray, but not in her usual way. She raised her hands to the cracked ceiling and murmured, "Isa, Jesus, have mercy on us. Protect my son. Show him your love." That scared me. "Mother," I said, trembling. "The elders say that name should not be spoken." She looked at me with a sad, almost resigned smile, but one full of something that I now recognize as faith. "They are afraid, son, but I know what is true. Isa came to save, not to condemn, to forgive, not to punish. One day, you will understand why I call you in the dark. I never asked again. The following year, she died, not from the war, but from an illness that no doctor wanted or could treat. And I, an orphan, was handed over to the men in the black turbans who traded my prayers for weapons and my childhood for hatred. I buried the memory of my mother along with her body. But that night, that memory came back vividly, pulsing inside me. And the only phrase that echoed in my mind was, "Isa came to save me." I opened my eyes, my heart racing. The camp was still restless. Farid smoked by the campfire, staring intently at the embers as if searching for answers there. Hamid sharpened his knife with automatic movements, trying to convince himself that he still had control over something. Others dozed off, but woke nervously at the slightest sound. That's when I heard it. A song, gentle, distant, but clear. He was coming from the cell. David was singing. I stood up as if something had pulled me by the soul. I walked towards the rusty bars, and each step seemed heavier than the last. No one stopped me. In fact, no one could have. Everyone was hypnotized by the same sound. That melody wasn't in Dari, nor in English. It seemed ancient, from another time, another world. Perhaps Hebrew, perhaps Aramaic. I don't know. It didn't matter. I didn't need to understand the words. The peace that emanated from that voice transcended any language. An inexplicable joy spread through my chest. And how was that possible? He was imprisoned, condemned, surrounded by enemies. And yet he sang like someone walking freely among flowery fields. I approached the railings. David was sitting on the dirt floor, legs crossed, hands resting on his knees. His closed eyes reflected the moonlight filtering through the cracks in the rocks. A peaceful smile lit up his face as he sang. When he finished, he opened his eyes and stared at me, as if he already knew I was there before I even arrived. "During all this time you've been here, you haven't been able to sleep." It wasn't a question. "Nobody can do it," I replied, my voice hoarse. "I know," he said. "The fear is high, higher than any gunshot." I approached, gripping the bars tightly, feeling the cold of the metal and the heat of my own anguish. "What are you?" I demanded. "A sorcerer? A demon? How? How did you do this?" David shook his head slowly, with absolute calm. "I'm nothing special, Rashid. I'm just a man who found Jesus and decided to follow him, even if it meant dying. What you saw today wasn't my power. It was his. Impossible. It was more impossible than any gun jamming, bullet straying, or shot disappearing into thin air." I had no answer. David stood up slowly, walking until he was face to face with me, separated only by the rusty metal. "God is calling you, Rashid. He has done this your whole life, through your mother, in moments when your conscience screamed and you remained silent. Today, he has done it through me. He doesn't want your ruin. He wants your redemption." "I don't deserve redemption," I murmured, and the pain in the words crushed me more than any physical wound. My hands are stained with innocent blood. I took lives without hesitation. I followed orders without question. I was the executioner everyone fears. How could a God forgive me? Tears came, burning and humiliating, rolling uncontrollably down my face. David reached out, his gentle touch brushing my shoulder through the bars. A simple gesture, but one that shattered me, because that was exactly what he was. Someone Jesus came to save. He came for the brokenhearted, the lost, the murderers, the traitors. He was executed alongside criminals so that everyone would know. No one is beyond his love. "You don't understand what I did," I said. "You don't need to understand," he replied. "God already knows. And he still loves you. He still calls you by name. He still offers you a new life." I collapsed against the bars, and the weight of 17 years of violence crushed me. All the irreversible decisions, all the faces I would never forget, everything came crashing down on me like an avalanche. "What should I do?" I whispered through tears. "How can I change?" "You can't," he said with a painful honesty. "You can't undo the past. You can't bring back those who are gone. You can't erase the scars. But you can surrender your life to God, with all its weight, all its pain, and let him transform it. What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough? It's not about your strength, but his. Jesus said, 'Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.' Rashid, you are exhausted inside, even while still breathing, but he can give you life, true life. We spent hours like that, me crying against the cold metal, him on the other side, his hand on my shoulder, murmuring prayers in a language I didn't understand, but my soul understood. When I finally managed to speak, my voice was barely a whisper. Teach me how to pray to your God. David smiled, and in that smile there was a pure, intense, almost blind joy. He is not only my God, Rashid. Now he is yours too. That night, perhaps the darkest I've ever lived, I felt like someone trapped inside, as if the very air had become too heavy to breathe. The cold seeped through my clothes and seemed to want to reach my heart, which had been freezing for years. David was there, behind the makeshift bars, and I was still trembling from everything I had seen hours before. I trembled from the inexplicable and from what I felt inside. He began to pray, softly, with a calmness that both irritated and attracted me. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to talk to God. Not the God I repeated out of obligation, but the God he said loved me. I didn't know where to begin. I knew nothing. Repeat after me, he said softly. I swallowed hard. My throat was burning. Jesus. The word came out shaky, strange, forbidden, but real. I don't know how to pray. I don't know if the Lord wants me. I don't know if I deserve to be heard. My hands were sweating. My voice was faltering. But they say the Lord loves even those who don't deserve it. They say the Lord cleanses what no one else can cleanse. If that's true, if there's still hope even for someone like me, then here I am. I am everything I want to forget. I am guilt, blood, failure, and fear. But if the Lord wills it, transform me, because I can't continue living like this. There was no light in the sky, no earthquake, and no sound was heard. Nothing supernatural on the outside, but inside me, something stirred. Something I thought had been buried along with my childhood. A silent flame reignited deep within, timid but alive. And I knew that something had changed. I knew that prayer, twisted, broken, desperate, had been heard. If you ever thought that your past puts you beyond God's reach, I discovered there on my knees in the dark that He reaches even the deepest abysses. When the sun finally rose, the sky seemed to pour fire over the mountains, deep red, like blood or like rebirth. I didn't know which of the two suited me more that morning. I hadn't slept a wink. Every minute after that prayer felt like an internal battle, but for the first time I was fighting to live, not just to survive. My men began to rise, one by one. No one commented, but everyone was thinking the same thing. We had seen something impossible the day before. The camp was as crowded as a cornered animal. Farid came up to me with that tense look of someone expecting an explosion. "Commander, we need to decide what to do with the prisoner. We can't keep him here. The superiors will ask." He was right. I knew it from the first sunrise. But the thought of trying to kill David again tightened around my throat like an invisible hand. "I'll question you again," I replied, and even I heard the emptiness of that excuse. "I want to find out who sent it, if there are more people like him." Farid didn't believe it, but he nodded. Obedience, not conviction. It was the most I could ask for. I waited until everyone was distracted with their morning tasks. I grabbed a bottle of water, took a deep breath, and walked to the cell. David was exactly as I'd left him, sitting calmly, as if the world wasn't crumbling around him. When he saw me, he smiled. "It's strange to say this here, but good morning, Rashid." I looked away. "There's nothing good about this place," I grumbled, lacking the courage to admit that perhaps there was. I opened the cell door. She groaned as if in protest. On the other side of the camp, my men turned around, tense. "If you try to run away, they'll shoot," I warned. "I'm not going to run away," he replied, as if stating the most obvious thing in the world. "God brought me here, and I will only leave when He says it's time." Those words pierced me like arrows. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. A certainty I'd never had in my entire life. And there, standing before that open cell, I understood, even though I still couldn't accept it, that my life was already changing, and that nothing would ever be the same again. I took David to a secluded corner of the camp, where the mountain formed a kind of natural shelter. That place always seemed to me like a stone tomb, silent and cold, and in a way, that's exactly how I felt inside. Inside, with the wind whispering among the rocks, We sat facing each other. I handed him the bottle of water, and he drank slowly, gratefully, as if that simple gesture had some value. After a few seconds, I got straight to the point. Why did you really come? Don't tell me you crossed the whole world just to distribute books. Nobody risks their life for paper. He put the bottle down on the floor and stared at me with a different look, firmer than usual. Rashid, I came because God asked me to. I opened my mouth to reply, but he continued. 3 years ago, while I was praying, I heard his voice as clearly as I am hearing it from you now. He said, "Go to Afghanistan and take my love to those who consider themselves my enemies. Show them that I have forgiven even those who crucified me." I shook my head. This is insane. Completely insane. I know. He smiled sadly. I told God that right then and there. I said it didn't make sense, that I wasn't the right person, that I'd probably end up dead. And what did he answer you? I asked, against my own will. What kind of love costs nothing? It changes nothing. These words touched something inside me that I didn't even know existed anymore. Easy to say, I retorted bitterly. The price isn't falling on you. Yesterday I tried to execute you twice. I failed in impossible ways. If anyone finds out, if my superiors know, I'm the one who'll end up dead. I'll be accused of treason, of weakness, of selling out. David lowered his eyes, and for the first time I saw pain in him. Pain for me. Rashid, I didn't come to destroy your life. I came because God wants to save yours. All of it, not just your soul. He wants to tear out this prison you carry inside your heart. You don't understand anything. I raised my voice, feeling my control slipping. I can't just turn my back on everything. I can't wake up and decide I'm no longer a commander. I can't erase 17 years of war, of blood. I can't turn my back on the men who died by my side. My voice shattered like glass. I cannot become the enemy I have spent my life fighting. David moved a little closer, with that bright look in his eyes that both irritated and calmed me at the same time. What if I told you that following Jesus isn't betraying anyone? What if the real betrayal is continuing to live trapped in hatred, fueling a war that destroys not only others, but you as well? Rashid, God isn't asking you to reject your people or your culture. He's asking you to truly love them. True love doesn't kill. Love liberates. I clenched my fists. And how can I, with these hands that only know how to destroy, love anyone? It's not you who does it, he replied calmly. It's God. He gives you new hands. He gives you new eyes. He gives you a new heart. I suddenly stood up, pacing back and forth like a cornered beast. My mind was a battlefield. Yesterday, David continued, you prayed. Did that come from fear or from truth? I stopped. The words struggled to come out. It came from the truth, but I don't know what to do with it. He smiled, not with superiority, but with hope. So start by trusting. That's all. The same God who deflected those bullets yesterday is the God who can guide you from here on out. He didn't ask for perfection from you. He asked you to take one step, just one. And there, in that small stone shelter, I understood that, for the first time in my life, I was about to take a step that wasn't motivated by fear, hatred, or blind obedience. It was a step towards something entirely new. And what is that step? I asked, my voice still trembling. David smiled with that calmness that both irritated and calmed me at the same time. Let me go. The world stopped. What? Open the cell and let me go, Rashid. Not because it's safe, not because it makes sense, but because it's the right thing to do. Because it's the first step of faith that God is asking of you. My heart raced. Panic rose to my throat like a wave threatening to engulf me. My own men would see me as a traitor. The superiors would send in squads. There was no escape. If I let you go, they'll execute me, I murmured, feeling the knot in my chest tighten. The silence that followed was almost physical. To leave. The word echoed in my mind as if from another world. Where to? This mountain, this outpost, this war. All of this defined me. Who am I without it? You are a child of God, David said, with a conviction that shattered me inside. You are loved, forgiven, called to something greater than all of this. The war that shaped me, the fears that held me captive, it all seemed overwhelming. Yes, leaving it all behind would be painful. It would be terrifying. But on the other side of that fear, there is the life you were made for. I fell to my knees, burying my face in my hands. For minutes, I said nothing. I just breathed, lost in that space between what I knew and what I could barely imagine. Finally, I raised my eyes and looked at him. "And if I do this, and let you go, and abandon everything, what guarantee do I have that I'm not making the biggest mistake of my life?" David extended his hand. "You have no guarantees, Rashid, but you have a promise." Jesus said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." That promise has sustained my life, and it will sustain yours as well. I stared at his hand for what seemed like an eternity, and then, slowly, I took it. If you've ever had to choose between what's safe and what's right, between the familiar and the true, you know how much it hurts. That day, I made the most terrifying and at the same time liberating decision of my life. Under the dark cloak of night, while the wind howled among the rocks, I let David go. There was no drama, no gunshots. I simply opened the cell while my men slept, gave him supplies for a few days, a map with discreet routes to the border, and watched him disappear silently into the shadows. Before vanishing, he turned and said, "We will meet again, Rashid, in this life or the next." I stood there motionless, trembling, knowing I had crossed a point of no return. The following morning, when they realized the cell was empty, chaos erupted in the camp. Farid shouted confused orders, Hamid examined the broken lock in disbelief, and others ran back and forth searching for any sign of the prisoner who seemed to have vanished. "Commander!" Farid shouted, approaching me, his face red with fury. "How could he escape? The cell was locked." I remained silent. My impassive face, hardened by years of war, hid the turmoil I felt inside. I kept a straight face, as if what I was saying was just another logical observation of war. "The lock was already weak," I replied. "He must have forced it during the night. It's our fault for not keeping a closer watch." It was the bitterest lie that ever came out of my mouth, but it was the only one that could save David's life, and mine. "Do you want us to send a search team?" Hamid asked, tensely. "No." My answer came out quickly, almost sharply. "He must be far away by now, and after what we saw," I swallowed hard. "I'd rather he were even further away." Nobody argued. Nobody needed that. Everyone was too terrified to admit it, and that I knew was only the beginning. In the following days, I lived as if I were two men inside the same skin. On the outside, I was still Commander Rashid Khan, cold, calculating, obedient. He led patrols, organized supplies, and issued orders with the same firmness as always. But inside, everything had fallen apart. David's words had entered me like seeds that sprouted too quickly. Each order I gave seemed to weigh a ton. Every time I held my gun, I was reminded of the blood I had already spilled. When my soldiers spoke of enemies and infidels, I heard my mother's voice from the past saying, "Isa came to save, not to condemn." Those memories were screams inside me, and the more I tried to silence them, the stronger they became. A week after David's escape, I received an order that destroyed me inside. 3 prisoners, 2 men and 1 woman, were to be executed on suspicion of espionage. They were brought to our station already injured. The woman was bleeding from a poorly treated gunshot wound. One of the men was limping. The other could barely lift his face. Farid put a gun in my hand. "Commander, do you wish to honor the cause?" I looked at the gun, then I looked at them, and then at my own hands. And for the first time in 17 years, I said, "No." The entire camp seemed to stop for a second. "Arrest them," I ordered. "I need to interrogate them first. I want to confirm the accusations." Farid gave me a confused look, but obeyed. When night fell and everyone was asleep, I went down alone to the makeshift cells. The prisoners stared at me in sheer terror. To them, I was the personification of death. I spoke softly, almost as if I were learning to use my own voice again. "I'm not going to hurt them." I had never said anything like that to anyone before. "I need to know the truth," I continued. "Are you guilty?" The men fell silent, devastated. But the woman, her face marked with dried blood and tears, tried to speak. "My brother worked as a translator for foreigners," he said with effort. "When they found out, they executed him. Now they're accusing us because we're from the same family. But we did nothing. Nothing." Her voice broke. I closed my eyes. And at that moment, something inside me finally broke too. I knelt down to be at the same height as her. Listen carefully, I said, almost in a whisper. I'm going to get you out of here. Not today, but soon. I'll plan the route, get supplies, and I promise I'll never kill innocent people again. Never again. The woman looked at me as if I were saying something absurdly impossible. Why? She whispered. Why would you help us? I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I said aloud what was burning in my chest. Because I met someone who showed me that there is another way, and because if I don't start changing now, I'll end up dying inside the monster I've become over so many years. Over the next 2 weeks, I planned the escape with obsessive attention to detail. I falsified reports, bribed a guard with valuable information, created a false alarm about an attack that would never happen, and, on a moonless night, I led the 3 prisoners along a secret trail I had known for years, taking them to a neutral village where they could finally have a chance to live. Before they walked away, the woman held my hand tightly. What's your name? He asked. It doesn't matter, I replied. Just live, and if you ever can, pray for me. Pray. To whom? To Jesus. Him. He was the one who saved me at that moment. I returned to the outpost as dawn painted the sky in shades of orange. My men began to wake up, still unaware of anything, but I knew time to act was running out. In the days that followed, I began to pray in secret. I didn't have a Bible. I didn't know the correct prayers. I just whispered trembling words in the dark, asking for strength, asking for guidance, imploring God to show me the next step. And then, something extraordinary happened. During a patrol through a devastated village, I found something hidden beneath the ruins of a destroyed house. A small Bible in Dari, stained with dried blood, its pages crumpled but still legible. I picked it up with trembling hands, looking around to make sure no one was watching, and hid it close to my body, feeling the warmth of the book as if it were a live ember. That night, under a blanket, with a small flashlight, I read the words of Jesus for the first time with my own eyes. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Each verse was like an explosion inside my chest. I read until my eyes burned, until tears blurred the words, until I felt my heart burst with the truth I was discovering. But along with the revelation came fear. How could I continue being a Taliban commander by day and a follower of Christ by night? How could I hold a gun in one hand and a Bible in the other? I needed to choose. And choosing meant giving up everything, my position, my identity, my security, perhaps even my life. A week before making that decision, I had an unexpected encounter. During another patrol, I saw an old man selling bread on the outskirts of a remote village. Something in his eyes stopped me, a calm light, a peace I instantly recognized. You're a believer, I murmured, almost without realizing it. He looked at me intently, assessing whether I posed a threat. After a few seconds, he replied in a cautious voice, I'm learning too, but it's necessary. I need to keep going. Seeing that I wasn't alone brought me a strange mixture of relief and hope. The old man's eyes filled with tears. Son, he said, his voice trembling, we are more numerous than you imagine. We hide, we meet in secret, but we exist. And at that moment, something inside me changed. For the first time, I felt that there was real hope, and that my life could be different from what I knew. The persecuted church is still alive. Those words kept echoing in my mind long after the old man had spoken. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, that perhaps it was my imagination, a product of weariness, and the weight I already carried in my chest. But he repeated them in a low voice, almost a whisper, like someone who fears being heard, and at the same time carries a hope too old to die. Can I walk with you? I asked, unsure if I was being too bold or just desperate. The old man frowned, assessing every detail of my face as if trying to see my soul behind the uniform. Finally, he nodded slowly. There's a meeting in 3 nights, in a cave to the north. If you want to meet us, go alone, and never, ever reveal the location. For the next 3 days, time seemed trapped inside me. I barely slept. It was no longer the fear of death, nor the fear of being discovered. It was the strangeness of feeling a new hope sprouting where before there had only been emptiness. When the appointed night arrived, I left the camp under the pretext of checking for enemy movements. But in truth, I was following the makeshift map the old man had drawn in the dust with the handle of his staff. The cave was almost invisible, hidden behind a dry waterfall. Inside, it could barely hold 20 people, but the candlelight made the space seem larger and more sacred. There were men, women, young people, and even a child. They all sang softly so deeply that it seemed as if they were breathing prayer. When I walked in, the singing stopped. A heavy silence fell. I still carried my gun. I still wore my uniform. In their eyes, I was still the kind of man who could destroy their lives. Peace. I forced the word out. I came looking for Jesus. The old man approached slowly, touched my shoulder and smiled with tears in his eyes. So, son, you found the right family. That night, my heart opened up like never before. I cried without shame. I cried like someone who for years had carried a weight greater than their own strength. And there, among strangers who already loved me even before knowing my name, I understood. I couldn't continue living divided between two worlds. I had to choose. The discovery came late in the afternoon. A sudden descent into hell. Farid found the Bible. I had made the most foolish and fatal mistake. I left the book partially exposed under my sleeping bag after spending the entire night reading, without realizing that the sun had already risen. When I returned from patrol, he was waiting for me, motionless, pale, clutching the Bible, as if it were burning his hands. "Commander?" His voice trembled with hatred and confusion. "What is this?" The entire camp came to a standstill. Men who had known me for years now stared at me, as if they were seeing a ghost, or worse, a traitor. I took a deep breath. There was no other way out, and I was tired of hiding the truth. "It's a Bible," I replied. "And yes, I've been reading it." The silence that spread seemed to precede an explosion. "You betrayed us," Farid roared, throwing the book to the ground as if it were poison. Hamid pulled out his gun, then another, and another. Suddenly, there were half a dozen rifle barrels pointed at me. Men who had fought alongside me, slept under the same tarp, entrusted me with their lives. I raised my hands slowly. "Put down your weapons," I pleaded. "I will not fight. I will not hurt any of you, but I will also not deny the truth." My voice came out strong, even though my heart was beating so fast it felt like it was going to explode. "I met Jesus," I admitted, "and he changed my life. I'm not the man you think I am anymore." "You're a traitor!" Hamid spat the words like poison. "You deserve to die." Maybe he really does deserve it. My chest was burning. I did things no man should do. I killed innocent people. I blindly followed orders. And for all of that, I should die 1,000 times. But God found me. He forgave me. He gave me peace. And for that, I have no regrets. "Shut up!" Farid took a step forward, trembling with anger, fear, or both. "Don't lump us together with you. Don't talk as if we're the same." "I chose to live," I replied before he finished the sentence. "For the first time in 17 years, I chose to truly live, not just survive. If that's betrayal, then I accept the blame." Farid raised the gun, pointing it directly at my head. I felt the cold of death run through every nerve. I closed my eyes, expecting the shot I thought was inevitable. But before that could happen, Hamid shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. "Wait! If we execute this here, the superiors will ask questions. They want to know how this happened, why we didn't notice it sooner. They'll hold us all responsible." Farid hesitated. Logic began to penetrate his fury. He took a deep breath and finally said, "Then, we'll hand it over. Let them decide its fate." They tied my hands with ropes so tightly it felt like my circulation stopped. They dragged me to the same cell where David had been, and there I remained for 3 days, awaiting a verdict that could mean my public execution. Surprisingly, I didn't feel despair. Instead, I felt peace. Every moment of silence turned into prayer. I whispered the words of the Bible, hastily memorized, repeating the promises I now treasured. And even in the darkness, I felt God with me. So real he seemed almost visible. "Do not fear, for I am with you. Even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you will fear no evil. He who began a good work in you will complete it." On the third night, I heard a whisper from outside the cell. "Rashid." I looked up. It was Amir, one of the youngest guards, only 19 years old, always quiet, always observant. "What do you want, Amir?" I asked. "I want you to know something." His voice was barely audible. I've been questioning everything. I've seen things I can't justify. I've done things that haunt my dreams. But when I heard you speak that day, when you said you found forgiveness, something awakened within me. I approached the bars, facing him. Amir, if you are seeking the truth, follow it, no matter the cost. In the end, it's the only thing that matters. He took a deep breath, looking around. They're coming for you tomorrow, a firing squad. They'll take you to the public square. But I can help you escape. I know a way out tonight. I can distract the other guards. I stood there, motionless, trying to process it. Why would you do that? I asked. Because if your God is real, if he can truly change someone like you, then I want to know him. But I can't if you're dead. Tears streamed down my face. Amir, if you help me, you'll be considered an accomplice. Your life will also be in danger. I know, but I'm willing to take the risk. That night, under the pale moonlight, we escaped. There was no glamour, no heroism. We ran through the mountains, stumbling over rocks, hiding in caves. Every shadow seemed like a death sentence. Every sound made my heart race. Amir had already gathered supplies, water, dry bread, and a rudimentary map. There's a Christian organization on the border with Pakistan, he said, breathless. They help refugees, persecuted people. If you get there, they'll be protecting you. As for me, I'll say you attacked me, that you knocked me unconscious. They'll believe it, but you can never go back. We stopped on a ridge, breathing heavily. Dawn was beginning to paint the horizon in shades of gold and pink. For the first time in a long time, I felt something that wasn't fear, hope. Amir, he said, holding his shoulders firmly. Thank you, and please, seek this truth. Seek Jesus. He is waiting for you. The young man nodded, tears streaming silently down his face. Then he turned and ran back to the life I was leaving behind. I, for my part, continued alone, heading into the unknown, without a map and without any certainty of survival. The journey to the border lasted 11 days. 11 days walking at night, hiding during the day, surviving on the bare minimum. There were moments when hunger and thirst brought me to the brink of despair. Moments when I thought my strength was gone. Moments when I heard patrols so close I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But even so, I continued. On the 12th day, nearly fainting from exhaustion, I spotted a small, simple building with a cross painted on the door. I knocked hesitantly, and a middle-aged woman opened it. She looked me up and down, noticing my dirty and torn uniform, my eyes sunken with tiredness and fear. "Do you need help?" Endari asked, her voice soft but firm. "I need shelter," I replied hoarsely. I was a Taliban commander, but I found Jesus, and now they want to kill me. She showed no fear, only compassion. "Come in, brother. You are safe here." The months that followed were a time of complete healing, physical, emotional, and spiritual. The organization helped me confront my past, process trauma, learn about the faith that transformed my life, and ultimately resettle me in a safe place where I could start over. Today, I live in a country I cannot name, working to help refugees, especially those fleeing situations similar to mine. I share my testimony whenever I can, because the world needs to hear that no heart is so hardened that God cannot reach it. Since then, I haven't fired a gun. I haven't taken another life. Instead, I dedicate my days to restoring lives, offering hope, support, and showing what God can do with someone who was once a murderer, but chose to surrender. It wasn't easy. I lost friends. I lost my identity. I lost my homeland. But I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained my soul. When I think of David, of that impossible day when the bullets missed him, I finally understand what God was doing. He wasn't just protecting him. He was calling me. He was showing that his power, his love, and his forgiveness are real, even for those who believe they don't deserve it. If this testimony touched your heart, share it. Let others know that God doesn't give up on anyone. This is a message of hope. If you carry the weight of irreversible decisions, if you feel your past is too dark, know this: Jesus offers a new beginning. No matter how stained your hands are, He can wash them, restore them, transform them. Pray with me. Jesus, I come to you as I am, with my frailty, with my guilt, with all the weight of my past. I don't know how to do this perfectly, but I believe that you can forgive me. I believe that you can transform me. I accept your offer of a new life. Wash me, transform me, use me. Amen. If you prayed this prayer for the first time, welcome to the family. Your life has just changed forever. May God bless you. And remember, no gunshot, no past, no darkness can separate us from the love of Christ.